Ambulance service, what's the telephone number you're ringing from, please?
This is the Emergency Control Centre of the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, where last year over 190,000 calls for help were received. Each day, our crews are sent from here to tend to the sick and to the injured. But inexcusably last year, our staff were either verbally or physically assaulted on more than 250 occasions. And in many of these instances, it was the patient themselves, the very person who the crew were trying to help, who carried out this assault. The incident may be reported on the news, and condemnation from all quarters will be swift, as will messages of support, all of which are greatly appreciated. But all too soon, the incident fades from the memory of the public, and even the memory of the perpetrator. But what about the victim? It can live with them for a very long time. Here, one of our paramedics, Heather, bravely tells of what happened to her and the impact it has had on her life. Although Heather is telling her story, this could be any paramedic, ambulance technician, ambulance care attendant, or member of our control staff who receives this abuse. It has to stop.
Sunday afternoon 2012, I got an emergency call to a house in Newtonabbey for a male patient who his wife had described as query fitting. So I proceeded upstairs in the house to one of the bedrooms in the house, where I was met by a burly 6 foot, I would imagine, male, dressed only in his underpants. He was in a very agitated and aggressive state, and at that stage I still was unaware as to what was wrong with him. I began to try and assess him, and he became very aggressive towards me. So I had keyed my mic. We wear radios and a mic set. I had keyed the mic to contact control, just to say that this guy was quite aggressive, and could they...
How was this aggression been displayed?
He was shouting at me. He was gesturing towards me. We have a defibrillator that we use to carry out a lot of our assessments, and he had tried to kick it and throw it across the room. Whenever I had keyed my mic for control, he fixated his aggression on the radio mic and tried to pull it off my uniform, which he succeeded in doing. And in doing that, he ripped my uniform. The lapel for the radio mic came off.
So at that point, you were isolated from any help, really, from control?
At this point, I couldn't speak to them any longer. He had taken the mic off me. I tried to get away from him, but the mic is connected via a cable to the handheld portable radio that was on my belt. So as I tried to get away, he reeled me in, if you like, using the radio lead itself. I then contacted control via the emergency button on our handheld portable radio, and again his aggression was fixated on me trying to use the radio to call for help, and he then reached out for the base set on my belt, and in doing that he ripped my trousers. At this stage, obviously I was trying to get away from him, and I moved out into the hallway. He came out of the bedroom after me and got me by the scruff of my shirt and tried to throw me down the stairs.
How did you feel as this was going on? What was going through your mind?
Shock, I think, because it's difficult when you're in a house and your sole purpose is to help someone, to find yourself in a situation where somebody is being aggressive towards you. I was very shocked and still trying to work out what was going on. I felt very frightened. I felt very isolated. He was ripping at my uniform, which was causing my shirt to become undone. He had already ripped and torn my trousers. He was in a relatively undressed state, and I really feared for my safety. I feared for my life, actually. I thought he was going to kill me.
And what was his wife doing at this stage?
She was screaming. at him to let go of me. She was very distressed and was trying to intervene on my behalf. But as I say, he was a big guy. He was a lot taller than me. I'm small, and I'm sure he was maybe 17, 18 stone. So neither of us were very successful in getting him to let go of me.
Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
Never. It's an element of trust, I suppose, we have when people invite us into their homes, and it's an element of trust that we have that when we go into people's homes, we're going to be safe. This was the first time that anything like this had ever happened to me, and it unnerved me for a long time afterwards.
How did it stop? How did it come to an end?
Well, we went from the top of the stairs to the bottom. We wrestled the entire way down. I was able to keep my balance on my feet, which I think is what saved me. If I had fallen, I knew if he had have come down on top of me, I would have been killed. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, I was able to exit the property through the front door. So I found myself on the front steps of the property with my shirt ripped off and my trousers ripped. And then I remembered that the gentleman's wife was now in the house on her own with him. So I went back in to make sure that she was okay.
It's amazing that what you were going through when you'd collected yourself in the front door, knowing the danger that was in that house for you, that you went back in. What makes a paramedic do that?
I think it's what makes a paramedic. It's our desire to help people and not see people injured. My conscience wouldn't have let me leave that woman in the house with that gentleman the way that he was behaving. I couldn't have done it.
And the sirens that you heard, what were they?
They were my colleagues. I didn't realise at the time that whenever I'd hit the emergency button, they were able to hear what was happening in the house, so they could hear me shouting at the guy to let me go. They could hear his wife pleading with him to let me go. They could hear the kerfuffle as we struggled, and afterwards I heard that my colleagues were preparing themselves in the ambulance to burst into the house in an attempt to save me. Yeah.
Right. What then happened to the man? What did he change?
He completely changed his behaviour like that. He went from being very aggressive, very angry, very physical, to being almost like a completely different person.
Why do you think that was?
The first colleague that walked in through the door was a big burly paramedic, a male paramedic, and that made this patient change his attitude entirely. And I believe that I was a small female, and that whatever aggression he had, it was directed to women, and I was perhaps an easy target, being small and being female. I knew I was in a very frightened state, and it was going to be a difficult thing for me to get over, so I went to the back of the ambulance to speak to him, to ask him what was that all about.
What did he say?
He mumbled that he was sorry, not with much conviction, but that was his response.
What happened to him then, first of all, very briefly? Like, was he taken to hospital?
Yeah, he was taken to hospital.
By the crew?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes off in the care of your colleagues
Mm-hmm.
who knew what he had done to you.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
I went back upstairs to get my equipment that he had kicked about the bedroom, and got back into my ambulance jeep, put a coat over me so that was decent to drive, and drove back to the station.
And what did you do at the station, Heather?
Cried. More of my colleagues were in the station, so we got to talk over what had happened, which was good.
It's still frightening. Still frightening. And were you off work after that?
I was, not that I wanted to be, but it left me very shaken and frightened to go into people's houses.
You want to pause for a while here?
Yeah.
So then after you'd gathered yourself at the station with the help of your colleagues,
Yeah.
and you were off for a while,
Mm-hmm.
what was that period of time like, being off from work?
It was difficult. As paramedics, we lean a lot on each other, so not having my colleagues around me probably was quite hard. I went through a period of time where I couldn't sleep, where I was having nightmares. I'm a long time in the ambulance service, and I have never felt vulnerable as a female ever before, and have worked as a lone responder for a long time. But this probably shook me more than I thought anything ever would. And it was because it was so unexpected in nature. We expect on a Friday and Saturday night, unfortunately, to be faced with aggression. And it was because it came out of the blue and I wasn't expecting it, that I found it quite difficult to deal with, and it made me question every scenario, every call, every house that I go to, and it made me feel more vulnerable than I'd ever felt in my entire career.
What happened to the person that assaulted you?
Nothing.
Was he charged?
I don't believe so. From what I gather, he claimed that he had had some sort of blackout and couldn't remember anything that happened.
What do you think of that?
It disgusts me. There certainly was nothing there to prevent him doing that again to another paramedic, or to deter anybody else from treating a paramedic in that way.
And if you have a message to the powers that be as to what should happen with people who assault paramedics in the line of their duty?
I feel that anybody who assaults any paramedic in the line of their duty should be dealt with very severely by the courts, and I think it needs to be a custodial sentence. It can be nothing less.
Heather, you've been through a hell of a lot with that, even 3.5 years ago, and saw how emotional it was for you. Have you anything you could say to other paramedics who have suffered the same thing? What, in your experience, what can they do to help cope?
I actually found great comfort through care call. The care call team were fantastic with me, and also not isolating yourself. What I did wrong the first couple of days, couple of weeks, whenever I was off, was I isolated myself, and I found myself going down a very dark tunnel. We need to stay strong together and support each other in times like this. Absolutely, and as I mentioned, I'm in the ambulance service now a long time, and this is the first time that anything like this had ever happened to me. And in the majority of cases, in the majority of houses that we go into, we're met with great support by the general public, which we're very grateful for. If we can get the message out to the general public that this isn't acceptable, that their ambulance service is there to help them, and if we become injured in the line of our duty, it prevents us being able to provide that service.
Heather, really, from the bottom of my heart, thanks. You know, I've been chasing you for months to do this, and I knew you were going to get upset, but thanks a million for doing this.
No worries.